Sturtevant, Chief Economist with Bright MLS. I'm here to talk today about a study that we completed this summer, the on-MLS study, which is designed to look at the benefits the multiple listing service brings, not only to brokers and agents who use the system, but to buyers, to sellers, and to the overall efficiency of the housing market. This study that we have just completed is building off a report that was published last year when it was the first of its kind study to look at the differences in homes that are sold on the MLS compared to those that are sold off MLS. And we have made some enhancements to the study this time around and have identified the fact that the MLS is, of course, a really important part of the housing marketplace. The vast majority of homes are transacted on MLS. And there are some significant benefits to buyers and sellers I'm going to go into in a little bit more detail. But overall, this research provides evidence of the value, really, of an open, clear, and competitive housing marketplace that the MLS brings. As I mentioned, there was a study done last year. Bright MLS, really the first organization to do such a broad study looking at hundreds of thousands of transactions and comparing the prices of homes sold on the MLS versus those sold off MLS. For this study, we've made some enhancements to how the data are processed and filtered to get a better handle on the actual arm's length real estate transactions in the market. And we also employed a more rigorous, empirically sound statistical approach, which provides more reliability in the findings. And what we then have is a study that is more objective, a little bit more empirically sound, and it's also a study that's replicable. We're going to repeat this study for the Bright MLS footprint, but we're also able to help folks outside of Bright's footprint conduct this kind of analysis. After we made these improvements and sort of modifications to the study, the 2022 research really confirmed the results of the study that we published last year, that there are significant benefits associated with listing on MLS. As I mentioned, one of the important enhancements we made to the study this year was to go through a very rigorous process for identifying transactions that truly are arm's length transactions. And we start with public records data. We start with data collected by public agencies across 5 states in the District of Columbia. And there was a very rigorous process to exclude from the analysis transactions that weren't really arm's length transactions. So we excluded certain sales that were below a certain transaction price. We excluded short sales, foreclosures, some new construction. We also have a new process for excluding from this analysis flips, those properties where investors purchase a property and then resell the property very quickly. Co-ops were excluded. And at the end of this very rigorous data filtering process, we are left with those transactions that are truly real estate transactions that were conducted at arm's length. And this includes data from 2019 through the first quarter of 2022. What we're able to do then is take those public records data and look for those transactions in the Bright MLS data to identify those transactions that occurred on MLS and those that occurred off MLS. And as I mentioned, we were able to look at data from 2019 all the way through the second quarter of 2022. So we were able to identify transactions that took place before the pandemic, as well as during the last few years when the housing market has been very, 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 very hot. We ended up with over 840,000 transactions across 5 states and the District of Columbia between, as I mentioned, 2019 and the first quarter of 2022. We found that the vast majority of these sales, more than 80%, took place on MLS. And through this process, though, we were able to put together consistent data for those on and off MLS transactions. That's really important for being able to replicate the study going forward, both here within the Bright footprint as well as elsewhere. For last year's study, what we really did was looked at those properties listed and sold on MLS and those sold off MLS, and we simply compared the median sales price. This time around, though, we adopted a more rigorous statistical analysis, a weighted least squares approach. And basically what this approach does is says, well, let's think about all the things that might affect the sales price of a home. Let's account for property features like the type of home, the age of the home, how big it is. And let's also take a look at the neighborhood characteristics, right? All those things you might imagine would affect the price of a home, the location, the mix of other houses in the neighborhood, something about the economic conditions in the neighborhood. And so what we're able to do with this approach is say, look, if we have two homes that are otherwise similar in terms of property characteristics and neighborhood characteristics, if we have two similar homes, except one is marketed on MLS and one is sold off MLS, we can then be better able to estimate the impact, right, of having that home marketed and sold on MLS. So when we talk about the key findings, we find that overall, there are significant benefits to both buyers and sellers when homes are listed, marketed, and sold on the MLS. You know, for buyers, having the multiple listing service allows a level playing field for all prospective buyers to know that they're able to see all available homes on the market. And this is really important as inventory has been so low. Buyers need to feel comfortable that they're seeing all properties that are available to them. And it makes the search costs for buyers, that is sort of the effort it takes to find out what homes are available for sale. It reduces those costs to buyers when all of the properties are listed in one place. And then for sellers, there's also benefits, right? The listing on the multiple listing service allows for there to be basically more eyeballs, right? On your home, more prospective buyers viewing your home. And that brings then more competitive offers and ultimately brings the best offer for the seller. That could be the highest priced offer, or it could just be the best offer on some other measure, but it means that they're having a wider variety of prospective buyers look at their properties. We found 4 sort of specific findings from this research. The first is the vast majority of home sales across the 5-state area plus DC take place on MLS. The share was greater than 80% in 2019. And you can see we have the data for the entire region as well as for the Washington, DC, Baltimore, and Philadelphia metro areas. During the pandemic, during 2021, we saw the share taking place on MLS dip slightly, but that has rebounded where greater than 80% of home sales transactions in the first quarter of 2022 took place on the MLS. And so that gets to the value of having all of these properties that prospective buyers are looking at available to view in one place. The second key finding is that when we look at the transactions between the beginning of 2019 through the first quarter of 2022, and we looked at properties that were otherwise similar, right, in terms of their characteristics and in terms of where they were located, homes marketed on the MLS sold for an average of 13% more than those sold off MLS. And you can see that this, if you look at the bars for the Mid-Atlantic, you can see that this premium to sellers increased over time. So the benefit was even greater, for example, in 2021 than it was in 2019. So now the 2022 numbers are for the first quarter and really should be taken as preliminary, but it is sort of indicative that this pattern, that there is a premium to sellers who use the MLS to market their properties. And that's been ongoing even during the pandemic when the market was so fast paced. What this means is over this time, listing and marketing and selling a home on the MLS brings the average seller $45,000 more than had they sold their home off the MLS. So this is another measure that's obviously been increasing over time. In 2021, you can see that the typical home sold for significantly more on the MLS than it did off MLS. We looked at a specific kind of off MLS sale, an office exclusive, where an agent will market the property exclusively within their firm. And while we weren't able to do the same rigorous analysis that we were with the broader sample, because there were such a relatively small number, we found a similar pattern that that homes that are sold as an office exclusive, the vast majority of them actually ultimately are marketed on MLS. So about 2/3 of homes that begin as an office exclusive are ultimately listed and marketed on the MLS. Those that sell as an office exclusive command a sales price that's about $100,000 lower than homes that are sold on the MLS. And for those properties that are starting as an office exclusive and then move to the MLS, they are selling more quickly, and they're ending up, it's ending up being 18 days that buyers are sort of spending in an office exclusive environment, that they could have saved those 18 days had the property been initially and originally listed on the MLS. So there are benefits to the speed at which transactions can take place, as well as the price that sellers can receive for their property when homes are listed on the MLS as opposed to being transacted as an office exclusive. There's other research that has been done that has also demonstrated that these office exclusive listings actually have a negative impact on the housing market. So when homes are marketed exclusively within a firm, research in Houston found that buyers of color, people who have traditionally been left out of home ownership, are disproportionately impacted by those office exclusives. And those office exclusives actually exacerbate disparities in the housing market by limiting access to properties and limiting access to home ownership. The full report is available on the Bright MLS website, and there is a lot of information and shareables, including graphics and charts that you can use to share the information from this study that demonstrates that the benefits of the MLS extend not only to brokers and agents who use the system, but also to buyers and sellers, and to the broader housing market efficiency. Thank you very much.